Hello everyone, I am the Medic Kirby, and welcome to my channel, The Commander Tavern. The Commander Tavern is a channel dedicated to my favorite anti-gathering format. The Brewery is a series on this channel showcasing my spicy brews and other deck techs. On this episode of The Brewery, I'll be discussing my take on two commanders with friends forever from the Stranger Things Secret Lair, Max the Daredevil and Lucas the Sharpshooter. If you like this deck or any of the cards I'll be mentioning throughout the video, please consider using my TCG Player affiliate link when purchasing those cards. You can find that link down in the description. It'll really help out the channel. The best way you can help support the channel is with my Patreon. For just $1, patrons get early access to certain videos on YouTube. In fact, patrons got a chance to see this video earlier. You can also support the channel for free by simply liking, subscribing, and sharing, which also helps out a lot. You can join my Discord server for free if you want to join the Commander Tavern community. All pertinent links are down in the description. Alright, let's get back to the episode. Max is a 3/2 human with haste and friends forever for 1 generic, 1 red, and 1 green. She has a triggered ability similar to Joey N, but creates a clue instead of straight up drawing us the card. This can have its benefits more so than just having straight up card draw. As a bonus, she also untaps a creature while doing so. In this case, since having friends forever means that she can be partnered with another legendary creature with friends forever, so I partnered her with Lucas, a 1/3 human for 1 blue and 1 red, with an activated ability that combos with Max's triggered ability. Not only is this partnering super flavorful since they're boyfriend and girlfriend, if you've seen the show you'd get it, but the clue Max creates can be used by Lucas to ping a creature, goading it. And if Lucas was already tapped down, she could untap him or some other better tapped creature. While the deck isn't focused on goading creatures, it is focused on pingers and all that they can do. Even though Lucas can't hit any target, at least he can hit creatures with allows for removal right under command zone. My goal with this product was not only to partner together two legends that work super well together, but are flavorful as well. That's why in the previous episode of The Brewery, I partnered Eleven and Hopper. Not only do they synergize amazingly well as partners, but they're father-daughter in the show too, so it's a flavor win as well as a mechanical win, just like this boyfriend-girlfriend commander partnering. Best of all, if you don't like the immersion break, they're going to be reprinted in MTG IP form in Streets of New Capenna set boosters, so there's that to look forward to as well. You can get ideas here and then build them outside of the Stranger Things IP. As I just mentioned, the deck is focused around creatures that deal damage to any target, colloquially referred to as pingers. This color combination allows for including the best ones from throughout Magic's history. First, let's see how we're going to make them and Lucas dangerous, and then we'll see the rest of the pingers of the deck. Since goading isn't a guaranteed way of getting rid of creatures, cards like Basilisk Collar, Gorgon's Veil, Gorgon's Head, Quiet as Spike, Sarath the Viper's Fang, Venomous Fangs, Sword of Cauldron, and Dismiss into Dream help us out with that. Giving Death Touch to a pinger is a guaranteed way for their 1 damage to be lethal. Equipping either of the first 4 equipment will achieve that. However, Sarath does so as well without being limited to a single creature. Since the pinger is tapped when it's dealing the damage, if Sarath is on the battlefield, the 1 damage dealt to the target creature is from a source with Death Touch, thus killing the creature. Venomous Fangs is another way to achieve this with the old school wording for Death Touch. This aura doesn't give Death Touch, but it does give a similar effect. Now, beyond Death Touch, Dismiss into Dream does something similar to Sarath, but much worse. Indestructible laughs at Death Touch, so does Regeneration. However, if the creature being targeted has to be sacrificed, then simply targeting the creature with a pinger is enough for the opponent to have to sacrifice that creature, indestructibility be damned. Although it costs a whopping 7 mana to cast, the deck is green, so it should have no problem getting this online relatively quickly. Sword of Cauldron also bypasses indestructibility since the creature dealt damage gets exiled, so even if you ping the creature for 1 damage, that's enough to exile it, indestructibility be damned. Finn the Fangbearer also takes advantage of Death Touch by making our pingers even more dangerous. Granted, it's limited to combat damage, but once our Death Touch pingers have cleared the battlefield of potential blockers, we can attack instead, triggering Finn, giving our opponents 2 poison counters per Death Touch creature hitting them. So this also has the potential of giving us a win con faster than Death by a Thousand Cuts. Going back to getting rid of creatures, Necrotep and Willbreaker have a similar effect than the first ones mentioned in that they can help get rid of a creature, just not by destroying it. Necrotep freezes the creature and keeps it frozen so long as you control the Necrotep. As a bonus, if you ping an opponent, they lose a life, essentially making the Death by a Thousand Cuts just slightly faster. Willbreaker is perhaps the best of the effects that synergize with pingers since you're stealing the targeted creature. So as long as you don't kill the creature, you steal it for as long as you control Willbreaker. You can also technically steal creatures with Mimic Vat. Since it's so easy to kill creatures with this deck, imprinting a creature with a strong enter the battlefield trigger goes a long way with Mimic Vat, or maybe you just want to copy a very useful creature or a huge beater to use that turn. Detection Tower and Arcane Lighthouse are also included to make sure we can even hit target creatures. Hexproof and Shroud are very annoying keywords when it comes to being able to hit creatures with pingers. Best of all, these lands don't take up a slot in the deck since they tap for mana and don't enter the battlefield tapped. As for those pingers, Razorfin Hunter, Cunning Spark Mage, Electrode, Prodigal Pyromancer, Prodigal Sorcerer, Rootwater Hunter, Cicada Firewalker, Thornwind Fairies, Vithian Stinger, Volshock Sorcerer, and Zuran Spellcaster are the ones that can deal 1 damage to any target, unlike Lucas. so these can hit creatures, opponents, and planeswalkers. Some of these have bonuses, but they're just mainly used to deal 1 damage to any target, hopefully killing it, freezing it, exiling it, sacrificing it, or stealing it. This might seem like an excessive amount of pingers, but that's because they only help keep the board clear of creatures, but can also be used to win the game. But we'll see that in a moment. Goblin Sharpshooter, the last of these any target pingers, is the best one because it untaps itself whenever any creature dies. It might not untap during your untap step, but on its own it can mow down an army of 1 toughness tokens or creatures. In any case, if it's able to kill any creature it hits, it alone can wipe opponents' boards of creatures. This creature is definitely an MVP. Equipping Thornbite Staff onto a Death Touch pinger can also have the same effect. While a Death Touch Goblin Sharpshooter is enough to get the job done, Thornbite Staff turns any pinger into a Goblin Sharpshooter, so it definitely does some work in the deck. Faces of the Past can do something similar, but it'll only untap all creatures that share a creature type with the creature that die. This might seem a bit limiting, but if you kill the human, then all of your human pingers untap. If you kill a wizard, then all of your wizard pingers untap, etc. It's also great against tribal decks. If you kill a creature of that type, then you can tap down all the other creatures of that type, so it definitely has its uses. But with the potential of untapping all of your creatures, the absolute best of these effects is Intruder Alarm. Granted, creatures won't untap during their controller's untap step, but each time a creature enters the battlefield, it untaps all other creatures, regardless of creature type. So it's pretty clear just how epic of an engine can be formed with Intruder Alarm. Even something as simple as Forbidden Orchard becomes so good with Intruder Alarm out. Not only do you get 1 mana of any color when you tap it, but you're essentially untapping all of your creatures when you do. Even better than that is using Sprout Swarm. Not only is this card amazing interaction with Max, since you can potentially cast it twice every turn in order to trigger her, but it also helps you go infinite with Intruder Alarm. With enough creatures, you can cast this for free. Then you'll get a Saproling token. With enough tokens, you can then just keep tapping down the tokens to free cast Sprout Swarm along with its buyback cost. You can now tap down your pingers to deal damage to your opponents in response. They get untapped, and then you can keep tapping down your Saproling tokens to keep untapping them and your pingers for infinite damage. You can still win by 1,000 cuts, making sure you're the only player with creatures on the board, but at the very least you can end the game pretty quickly right then and there. Seedwar Muse is another way to get more mileage out of your pingers as well as anything else that taps for value. Being able to use your pingers to deal damage every turn is insane, especially when your pingers are used for more than just being annoying, which we'll soon see in a bit. Either way, it's great to untap everything because then it's easier to cast 2 spells each turn and trigger max. 1000-Year Elixir is another way to extend the mileage of our pingers by allowing us to activate them even if they had summoning sickness. As a bonus, for 1 untapping, we can untap any of our creatures at instant speed. The final pinger of the deck is restricted like Lucas, and that's Daryl Hunter of Walkers. The good news is that if you're adamant against immersion breaks in Magic the Gathering, WotC finally caved in and will in fact reprint the Walking Dead Secret Lair in MTG IP version at some point in the future. In any case, whichever version you prefer, this card is crazy good here. During your upkeep, you give an opponent 3 zombie tokens. Then, if any zombie controlled by an opponent dies, you draw a card. While Daryl's enough to kill a zombie, killing the other zombies with our other pingers will have us potentially drawing 3 cards per turn. Either way, Daryl as a pinger is still good because if he had Death Touch, then he can help get rid of creatures. Or if equipped with Thornbite Staff, he'll be enough to kill those Walker tokens and draws 3 cards each turn. Speaking of drawing cards, enchanting any of our pingers with Curiosity, Keen Sense, Ophidian Eye, or Snake Umbra will do a ton of work. Notice that with the way these auras are worded, it's not limited to combat damage, so any opponent we ping means we draw a card. So this can have us draw a ton of cards per turn with enough pingers enchanted with these. They're amazing here. We can also use those pingers for value with enraged creatures. Silverclad Ferocidons, Raging Raptors, Ripjaw Raptor, and Body of Knowledge are amazing in the deck. If pinging our opponents with an enchanted pinger to draw a card isn't enough, we could just ping our own Ripjaw Raptor or Body of Knowledge for the card draw. Raging Raptors are just crazy good here. You can very easily get out all of your basic lands from your library straight onto the battlefield in just a couple of turns around the table. The Ferocidons are just ferocious. Again, the steep casting cost isn't really an issue in a green deck, but pinging these several times in a turn around the whole table and your opponents will soon enough have nothing left on the board, not even lands, especially since it's each opponent, so pinging them multiple times hurts them all many times. Another great combo that you can include in the deck that I didn't is Cormus Bell and Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth. I mentioned this combo as a super secret tech in my Ravnica Wizard Savant deck tech video that I put out years ago. It's not the best quality video because I was just starting, but if you want to see how a pinger tribal deck can work in mono blue, it's definitely worth checking out. Especially since hardly anyone even runs Rebecca, let alone has her as a commander. Anyways, the way the combo works is by making all lands become swamps, and then have those swamps become 1/1 creatures. So with our pingers, we can essentially keep our opponents free of lands for the rest of the game. Bonus points for using this with Goblin Sharpshooter. Even though Max is a supporting commander, she's still useful. She investigates and untaps a creature each time we cast our second spell each turn. However, in order to make that happen more often than just in our own turn, the deck's running Leyline of Anticipation, Vidalcan Orrery, and Tidal Barracuda. Thanks to these permanents, we can cast our spells whenever we want, so we can distribute our spells to twice per turn in order to always trigger Max, or we can simply cast everything reactively or at the beginning of the end step before ours. Alchemist's Refuge and Winding Canyons also help us cast our spells with Flash, although Winding Canyons is only restricted to creature spells. But these 5 cards synergize so amazingly well with Seedborn Muse. We can just untap each untapped step and very easily cast 2 spells each turn. Tamiyo's Journal is thus included to take even further advantage of Max's clue tokens. Not only do we investigate during our upkeep, but we can sacrifice 3 clues and tap it to tutor for any card in our library. In a sense, this is a fair tutor, but in this deck we have the potential of tutoring each turn once we get an engine going. The following cards in the deck are the essential card advantage, responses, and mana acceleration of any deck. Pact of Negation, Swan Song, and Mana Drain help protect our board by countering most board wipes as well as deterring any combo player from comboing off and defeating us. Mana Drain in particular is useful at giving us colorless mana to either cast spells or crack clues. Beast Within and Chaos Warp help deal with any potential permanent that did make it through. We particularly want to get rid of any effects that give hexproof or to our opponents or their creatures, even though we also saw that the deck has 2 lands that help us with that too. Cyclonic Rift helps get rid of absolutely everything when overloaded, so it can help get rid of everything else so we have no issues dealing with creatures. Mystic Sanctuary can help us top deck any response we need as well as any other instant or sorcery we might want to reuse. It's especially useful when fetched for in a pinch or in response to drawing a card. Speaking of drawing cards, Diviner's Portent, Commander's Insight, Drown in Dreams, Stroke of Genius, and Blue Sun Zenith are the deck's non-synergistic and independent ways of drawing cards. Since we want to make the most of casting things outside of our turn, these are great mana sinks to cast at the end of the turn before ours, or any turn we want to once we get Seedborn Muse out. Thought Vessel and Reliquary Tower are also included since we are drawing into so many cards with this deck. The clues aren't always just used to activate Lucas, we can also use them if we want to draw a card in a pinch. Thus, they don't really take up a slot in the deck, since the Tower is a mana producing land and Thought Vessel is a mana rock. Speaking of, Mana Crypt, Soul Ring, and Arcane Signet are the rest of the deck's mana rocks. These are pretty ubiquitous, so their inclusion is pretty self-explanatory. Dryad Arbor, Birds of Paradise, and Bloom Tender are the deck's mana dorks and a bit more useful than the rocks, especially thanks to Intruder Alarm. Max can also untap any of them when she triggers, which is another thing to note. However, thanks to Intruder Alarm, we can also potentially generate infinite mana. The best thing about the Arbor is that it's fetchable, with the deck's fetch lands as well as 2/3 of my favorite ramp trifecta, Farseek, Nature's Lore, and 3 Visits. While these can very easily get us ahead with double-typed lands or with the Triome, we can use the last 2 to get Dryad Arbor for some untapping shenanigans and mana acceleration that way. The rest of the deck is just the rest of the lands. The deck's running all 9 fetch lands, all 3 dual lands, all 3 shock lands, Ketria Triome, Command Tower, and Ancient Tomb, as well as 3 of each basic land. And as with all of my deck techs, you don't have to run the more expensive mana sources like the dual lands, Mana Crypt, etc. if you don't already have them, won't proxy them, or aren't playing online. You can very easily swap them out for budget substitutes and the deck will still work just fine. The large amount of basics is because of Ranging Raptors. Plus, they're also fetchable if we already have all of our multi-type land up. This brew is just an idea of how to build around Max and Lucas. Since I wanted to flavorfully partner the legends from the Stranger Things Secret Lair based on the show, I already partnered Mike with Will and 11 with Hopper. Max and Lucas, while being the remaining ones, was the next best partner pair. I could have partnered Lucas with Dustin since they're also close friends in the show, but Dustin wasn't as good with Lucas as Max is, and it's still a flavorful partnering. It's a shame that Steve wasn't the secret card. Otherwise, you could have partnered all of the Friends Forever commanders without overlap or anyone being left out. That way I could have had Dustin with Steve, which would have been also flavorful since they're best friends in the show. Oh well. With these legends are released in Streets of New Capenna on MTG IP form, I will try some other configurations I had for them. Until then, if you're interested in the deck lists of this spicy brew of mine, you can find a link to it down in the description. I would like to thank all my patrons for supporting me, and a quick shout out to all my higher tier patrons, the brewers, for their patronage. I'd also like to thank anyone using my TCG Player affiliate link. That also helps out the channel. And to everyone, thanks for watching this episode of The Brewery on the Commander Tavern. I am the Meta Kirby, and happy brewing.